Welcome back to Project Fastfish, and today it's all about the letter K. That's right, the K as in K member or K frame, as some people call it. And we're going to address some things with our K member. Hey, that paint looks okay. What are you going to do to it, Mike? Well, let's find out. So this is the current state of our K member for Project Fastfish. This actually came off of the 73. As you guys know, if you've been following the story, Pop handed it to me on my 18th birthday. It kind of sat for a while. And then when I had a chance to work on it again, about 10 years later, we had it stripped down to its bare shell because that's what it needed. And we pulled the K member off. And then in 2008, I went ahead and had it sandblasted and didn't really do anything to address certain things because, quite frankly, I just didn't know any better and didn't know how to weld, didn't know how to do a couple of things, so I just kind of left it. Now, when I coated it, I sandblasted it, but only coated it with a POR 15 chassis coat. Never actually coated it with POR 15. And of course, my vision at the time was to go ahead and use the POR 15 because it was a, quote, superior product against rusting and, what have you. So not knowing it better, I just top coated it thinking it would provide the same protection. Well, when I started looking at this thing thinking, hey, I could address, now that I know how to weld, a couple of the concerns with this K member. And as I started to look at the things, I noticed, hey, there's a little bit of rust and scale that's forming underneath this top coat. And it's been sitting inside and unexposed. We better get this taken care of the right way. So that's one of the reasons that we're doing this. Additionally, there are some weak points in this K member. Now, the biggest weak point for the K member is its overall weight. All right. This thing weighs about 40-ish pounds. I don't know the exact weight of them because each one's a little bit different depending on the configuration and the setup here with the engine mounts, the power steering. Did it have power steering? Did it have manual steering? So on and so forth. And of course, you got your engine mounts. Where the engine mounts go, if it was a small block, a big block, so on and so forth. All right. But overall, this thing feels to weigh right around the 40-ish mark, maybe 35 to 40. So it's like moving a big plate in a weight room. All right. And that's a lot of weight for the front end. Now, companies and manufacturers do make tubular K members for this thing, but they tend to be a bit pricey. So my initial thought is go ahead and use the existing K member, and then if I ever decide I need to, I can go ahead and change out the K member for something a little lighter. Now, I am thinking something different up here for the power steering, because that's another huge, basically, cinder block that'll be sitting up here. That thing is heavy. So I might address that a little bit later. But right now, let's address some concerns that I have with this. Now, MOPAR factory K members, as I have found out, are kind of weak, all right? And that has to do with their basic design. Let me show you. If you look really closely, see these little spot welds? They used a spot welder, okay, to basically form two pieces together. All right, you got your top and your bottom, okay? I'll show you the bottom here in a few moments, okay? But basically, they just kind of spot welded here. Now, those spot welds do look significant. It looks like they used a nice big electrode to get those on there, right? And understand that back in the day, they used polyglass tires, which, unlike modern radials, really didn't have that feedback left to right. They were kind of weak on the sidewalls. So you'll see, like if you watch an old school movie or an old school film, as they're making turns, if that tire and that rim are sitting right here, that tire from where where the wheel is, really moves, all right, keeping as much traction as it can and creating a lot of weld deflection, changing in surface contact, so on and so forth, right? The wheel may not move a whole lot, but that tire does. We'll upgrade to modern radial tires where they're more reinforced on the sidewalls. And then suddenly, boom, we have issues here, okay? Specifically where these weak points are. Now, I would say it takes a lot to move these around, but there's a few things that enthusiasts can do to kind of reinforce this area. And the biggest thing they could do is weld, all right? They can do a nice bead weld to reinforce these weaker points. Now, do you need to bead weld up in here if you do this area? That's up to you guys. I would say probably not, because this is getting a lot of the forces on it down here. This right here is where the brackets are for the front sway bar. And of course, your front torsion bars, or what they call those Torsen bars, go up to here to the front or back or whatever this is. Yeah, that's right. Because this is the, there we go. Yeah, this is the other side. So this is facing, I'm going around the corner here, all right, as if it's facing the front of the vehicle. So yeah, those are the Torsen bars that go to the front. And then of course, you got your, where it bolts to the car at and what have you. Anywho, I say all that just to say that this thing is going to need a little bit of reinforcement if I'm going to reuse it and upgrade the suspension. And don't forget to check out that episode on lower control arms that I just published not too long ago. So what I'm going to do here in a few moments is I'm going to go ahead and finish sandblasting, not the whole thing, but just this area around here so I can get a nice clean weld. I tried wire wielding that, but I'm concerned with the amount of residual left debris in there. If you look there, you can kind of see some debris that might interfere with the welding. So I'm going to go ahead and just blast the edges here and then flip it over, do the edges over there, and then do the same thing on the back side here. You got a spot there, got a spot there, and over there, and of course, over here. Now, the other thing that they did from the factory was, since they built these to the car itself based off configuration, the guy that they were paying, or the woman that they were paying to do the welding, they just wanted it to go as fast as possible. So they didn't really get the cleanest welds here. And sometimes the welds are weak and they crack. So I wanted to take a moment to go ahead and, again, blast these edges. Why blast, not wire wheel? Again, blasting will ensure that I get cleaner to the metal and more of that debris out, okay? And I want a chance to go ahead and reinforce this welding here with some MIGging and kind of work the wand to kind of create a better weld in this area and all of the edges that I can physically get to in here where it attaches to the K-member. Now, this big old mess over here, do I need to worry about that? That looks like it's done pretty good, so I don't have to worry about that itself, okay? But it's the other areas that are attached to the K-member that are my primary concern. And maybe even this spot here, it's the engine mount, so I may not have to worry about where the engine mount is there. So when I get done with that, I could then go ahead and scuff everything down, get this thing cleaned up, and in epoxy primer, that should bend to this right here. And then I think this is kind of like an epoxy anyway, so it should be able to find, I should be fine with putting the epoxy primer on this. And then go ahead and get that Eastwood chassis black on here. And I'll talk more about that Eastwood a little bit later in another episode. So right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get this thing blasted where I talked about, and then get this thing back in here and start the welding process. I'm running only on my phone camera today, so I might hook up my other camera that's still kind of working to do the time-lapse stuff, but we'll see how that goes here in a few moments. But first, before I do that, what am I using to sandblast with? This is as cheap and as old as, well, I can get, right? I bought this thing probably in 2009 when I was originally doing the work on this thing. And it's basically a media blasting cabinet. Now, you don't want to, not cabinet, I'm sorry, media blaster. And you put your media inside, okay? And then you pressure the hose from back there, and then feed the media, allow the media to feed itself through that hose here itself. What am I using for media? I'm not going to share, all right? But I will tell you, when you're using something like this, there's not a lot of reason to buy the expensive stuff, because you'll just spend $40 a bag just for it to go everywhere. And even if you try collecting it, it's a nightmare and it gets all dirty anyway. So yeah, not worth the time, all right? But I can tell you that since we're blasting outside, we can get rid of just the cheaper stuff. In other words, play sand. But don't tell anybody about that, because they'll be like, oh no, you're going to get silicate poisoning. Not if you wear face mask and protection, alrighty? That is all we're going to use, and just simple play sand to do our blasting. And we're only doing some quick blasting just to clean it up around those edges. So it's not like we're completely exposed there. So there you go, guys. That's what I'm using. Nothing fancy. got the one time lapse done of the initial weld, but I didn't think I needed to get everything else done and show you me grinding and all that good stuff, because you guys kind of get the idea. If you're at this point and you're confident, you can kind of figure it out on your own. So yeah, I went ahead and took care of all of those seams here, and you can see here that it's not perfect. Again, I was using a MIG, not a TIG, and so I'm going to have some of these little pockets or what have you. But basically, once I ran my bead, I was able to go through and grind what was necessary from that side. Additionally, I did some reinforcement in certain spots. So I just like ran, if I thought it needed it, like right there, I went ahead and just ran a bead there, just kind of add some reinforcement. And then over here did the same thing. And over here, you can see I ran that guy right there. And over here got the same treatment as the other side. And I was really careful on how I ground that down so it looked more OE, if you will. Again, some of those pockets are there, but that's par for the course, I believe. And then, of course, over on the back side, everything looks really awesome. So now what I'm going to do is go ahead and sand down and clean and get this thing ready for a coat of epoxy. And then after the coat of epoxy is on there, I'll be ready for top coat and it'll be ready for installation. So everything is turning out really, really good. I will admit though, sometimes I got a little happy with my bead welding, and I think it's a little too much there. Maybe the wire speed was a little high, and maybe I was a little bit slow, but I was fighting a lot in there. Even with the blaster being ran in there multiple times, I still had a hard time getting good contact and good connection. And if you're saying, well, I can see all that grease right there, well, that's a lot of the burn and the smudge from the welding process. I had that pretty clean, but there was still some residual grit and such in there. Now, I didn't get all up in there because I didn't think it needed it. You can see the factory welds were sufficient and such. And then when I ran over here, of course, you can see that I really didn't need to touch that because the other factory on the other side, but I think that's good enough for a K member itself, and I think it's pretty awesome overall. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen, and that's it for this part.